Hey, welcome guys to another SEC football season. I'm here with Matt. We're here I think this is July 23rd. So it's been a full 7 months since we had our last video. We took a little hiatus. We were both pretty depressed with basketball season. So
Yep.
we've been enjoying some baseball. We've been enjoying some FC Cincinnati. We're both big MLS fans now. You got some
hmm
international soccer. We've been watching the
Yep.
Euro tournament, the Copa America tournament, and so we had to get on here because we have some exciting news about our beloved SEC. Matt, you want to explain what's going on?
Yeah. What's up, guys? Glad to be back and ready for a new season of college football. It's right around the corner. I can't freaking wait. Um, but yeah, the good news that crazy news that Justin was talking about was, we got a week and a half before all of our teams start hitting the field for fall camp. And apparently, our beloved SEC is looking to add two new teams.
Ooh.
And apparently it is a done deal. We just haven't, it's just not official yet, but it's going to happen.
I wonder who they're going to add. I know they talked about Clemson and Florida State in the past, but I guess that Florida State just isn't cut above the rest anymore.
No, no. They're going to add two teams out of the Big 12.
Ooh, again.
Freaking Oklahoma and Texas.
Unbelievable news. We literally checked our phones that day and we were like, come on, somebody's just throwing some crap out there. It's summer, it's just another one of those stupid little things where somebody throws it out there and hopes it sticks and somebody's going to take it up and run with it. But they started running with it and
Yeah.
everybody started running with it. And I was like, hold on, let me pay attention to this. Apparently, Oklahoma and Texas jointly reached out to the SEC. And now this is the only way it can happen. They can't, according to the rules, a conference can't jump out and ask a team to join it. So a team has to go out and seek out a conference and take a bid to try to join said conference. So
Right.
Oklahoma and Texas, they're looking at the writing on the wall, and I'm sure there's tons of reasons. But I mean, money
Money
joining
for
the
one thing.
SEC is prime real estate. Now, I know I think the Big Ten is very comparable as far as finances go as compared to the SEC. But adding Texas and Oklahoma should easily get the SEC way over the top. And like you said, it sounds like this is a done deal. And
Mm-hmm.
so, of course, me and Matt, we're going to run with it.
Yeah.
We've been talking about it all week. It's going to happen.
Yeah. It's going to happen, guys.
In our reality, we've been trying to figure out what's going to happen to the other teams in the Big 12. Is Kansas going to land somewhere? Is, Baylor, TCU, Texas Tech, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, where are all these teams going to end up going? And we're starting to hear some news, and it's hard to see which one's reliable. But I've heard talks that Kansas is looking to join a conference. I've heard that TCU, Texas Tech, and Baylor try to do a joint bid to get into the Pac-12. I don't think the Big 12 is surviving any of this, and losing Texas and Oklahoma, I mean, that's the coffin right there, man.
Yeah.
You can't come back from losing those two programs.
Right.
I
don't know, man. It just like you said. I mean, they were two of the founding members of the conference, and now they're wanting to leave.
Yeah.
And I mean, you said it right. It's solely about money. And the other thing is that the Big 12 is not going to survive this at all. Because
No.
I mean, if Oklahoma, let's just do Oklahoma for a second. If Oklahoma leaves, and comes to the SEC, you are losing your only participant in the college football playoff since its inception.
Yes.
You're only one.
Yep.
So, I mean, what else do you have to hang your hat on?
And there was, and if we remember, 2014, you had TCU and Baylor that were competing for the playoffs, and neither one of them got in. Actually, Ohio State jumped over them because they played a conference championship game. Now, Big 12 has rectified that by getting the NCAA to agree to have a championship game. But I think that started this, in my opinion. I mean, obviously the Big 12 was fractured, losing Nebraska, Colorado, Texas A&M, and Missouri. Forgive me if I'm forgetting somebody else, but I mean those are pretty prominent teams that were in that conference for quite a while, and for them to all just jump ship. And this is all going back, if people aren't familiar with it. Texas decided to go out and get their own network contract. So Texas started this crazy re-landscape in 2011 where teams just started shuffling all over the place. Like, it was hard to keep up with. I even forget sometimes that Maryland is in the Big Ten. Sometimes I forget that Pitt is in the ACC. I mean, it changed the entire landscape of college football and basketball and so on and so forth. So this could potentially be another one of those situations. And if I'm a team in the American Conference right now, I got to be licking my chops. I know we're talking about a 12-team playoff, but if you're seeing the landscape and you're like, wait a second, I think we could get in the ACC for pretty cheap right now, because if the SEC goes to 16 teams, you're pretty much guaranteed that the other conferences are going to try to get to 16 if it makes sense for that conference. So this is just crazy. I mean, I'd love to see Kansas join the Pac-12 or the Big Ten and play Nebraska again in football. And there's so many possibilities that could happen. I think the SEC is done if they add Texas and Oklahoma, at least for right now. I mean, never say never, I guess. But the other team that I really am interested to see what's going to happen with is Notre Dame. What's going to happen with Notre Dame? Are they going to have to join a conference now? Like, can they just keep playing like this and find one of those 12 spots? Does the group of 5 automatic bid, I guess, in the 12-team playoff, is that Notre Dame's to earn too? Like, there's so many questions. And I think the SEC, this is partly a financial, but also it's guaranteeing quite a significant amount of bids into a 12-team playoff is what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Because if it isn't just Texas and Oklahoma getting in, it's that strength of schedule that is just going to be impossible for people to match. So you're going to see teams, potentially you could see teams with 3 losses in the SEC leapfrog 2-loss teams in other conferences, because it's just so much harder to make it in the SEC with this potential shakeup that's going down.
Yeah.
So, of course, people are, with both teams, Texas and Oklahoma being in the West, people are really confused on how the SEC is going to look. Now, I know that I've seen, just add them both and move Auburn and Alabama over to the East. Yeah, it's good and well. I mean, you could say that, but let's think about what that means. You're only currently we're in an 8-game SEC schedule. You're looking at 7 games in your own division with that format. So that means you only get 1 crossover team. And I would have to say that's probably going to be a rotation. So you're losing a lot of significant rivalries between Alabama, Auburn, and other teams that were in the West by doing that. And it also moves out the possibility of a lot of East versus West rivalries, like LSU, Florida, like, a few other ones would be, you probably could think one right off the top of your head. I'm just spitballing here, but the fact that they are shaking it up, it means that a lot of teams aren't going to see another team for 14 years. If you get a home game against a team, you're not going to get another home game against them for another 14 years. And we already complain about that in the SEC now. I mean, what happened in 2011, 2012 with rescheduling, Florida hasn't played Auburn. They played Auburn in 2019 for the first time in 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, just played. It didn't matter where the game was played. They hadn't played each other in 10 years, and that used to be a year in, year out rivalry before Arkansas and South Carolina joined the conference in 1992, and then subsequently it getting rescheduled. I think that was in the early 2000s. I think 2002 they went to the 12-game season, so I think that's when everything kind of solidified a solid East versus West constant annual matchup. So I mean, do you see that holding any weight, having just 2 8-team divisions?
I personally don't think it will. I've seen that same scenario that you were talking about. Like you said, I mean, we would lose some significant cross division rivalries, and we would lose some division rivalries. I mean, what's one of the biggest games late in the season? Alabama, LSU. We would lose that. I mean, that's a guaranteed surefire SEC on CBS game, and you would lose that. And that would lose a lot of money for the network and for the conference. So I honestly don't know what they're going to do when they join, like how they're going to bring in, when it comes to football at least, what they're going to do with the divisions.
Yeah, and that's where I wanted to go with the majority of this video is it really makes things difficult just if we just focus on the SEC. And I'm sure we can make more videos talking about what that means for other conferences. And we will know a little bit more in the coming weeks if this continues the way it is. But a hypothetical that people have been passing around is this pod system. Have you heard about it, Matt?
No, I had actually not heard about it until we were talking about it right before we made this video.
Yeah, the pod system, and this was on ESPN and CBS. They talk about putting 4 teams in 4 different divisions and playing basically a round robin, and then playing 2 opponents from each of the other, or not each of the other divisions, but playing 2 of the other teams, 2 out of each division periodically, and it's random and it's rotating, and it's interesting. I kind of see the idea there, but it lacks understanding of the SEC. Listen to some of these teams that are in these groups together: Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Kentucky. Apart from Georgia, Kentucky and South Carolina have nothing to do with Florida at all. That would be, Florida would be losing Tennessee. They would be losing LSU. They'd be losing, and we've talked about the Auburn situation where that used to be Florida's biggest rival outside of Georgia in the conference. So it doesn't right any wrongs, and it creates more problems. And the same thing with this, Pod B, Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, Vanderbilt. Okay, so you have Tennessee. It's like I see a trend here. What they're doing is they're saving 4 teams, their traditional rivals, because in that scenario, Alabama gets their 2 biggest traditional rivals, Auburn and Tennessee. And the same thing with the first group. You have Georgia playing South Carolina and Florida. Those 2 of their biggest rivals. If we hop over to Pod C, you're looking at, I'm not sure who the hell this one's, I guess Ole Miss. You got LSU, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. So are we saving Ole Miss's rivalries? Like, what are we doing with that one? And, and then it looks like Pod D, they took all the Big 12 teams, well, with the exception of Texas A&M, and lumped them together. I guess the Big 8 or the Southwest Conference, whatever you want to call it. You have Arkansas, Missouri, Oklahoma and Texas. So I see two things there. Like I said, they're saving rivals for teams, and you could pick anybody in the Group D, and they have some history with the team. Not only are they doing that, it looks like they're currently taking this snapshot in time and they're projecting out two teams in each group that are clear-cut favorites in that group, and then two teams who are more or less balance each other out as far as talent or pedigree, brand building. So like you would have Georgia and Florida's balanced out by Kentucky, South Carolina, Alabama, Auburn's balanced out by Tennessee, Vanderbilt, LSU, Texas A&M's balanced out by the Mississippi schools, and Texas, Oklahoma's balanced out by Missouri and Arkansas. So I get where they're going with this, but it just doesn't take in consideration to what the SEC history is and how important it is for teams to play every single year these rivalries. And that's where you're not getting that guarantee with these two teams in each of the other groups at random. Like, I don't understand that.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that structure?
I get what you're saying. Like they're trying to protect those rivalries for some of the topper teams like Georgia, like Bama.
Mm-hmm.
But like I wouldn't like that personally as a UK fan. I enjoy playing Tennessee every year. We wouldn't get them, and that's a game I look forward to every year. And it's just there would be no. I wouldn't get the same. Like I wouldn't be as excited for some of those games because I mean you look at just that. If you just did that pod in general, Kentucky's probably going 1-2 in that pod every single year. We're beating South Carolina and we're losing to Georgia and Florida most likely. Maybe one year we could steal one against Georgia or Florida, but other than that, I mean
or 0-3.
It's not going to happen.
Depending on if South
Carolina or 0-3 if
figures out there.
Yeah, if South Carolina becomes something, we go 0-3. So.
And does anybody really think that Vanderbilt has a chance of beating Alabama or Auburn at any point
No.
in the history of that pod? There's no way.
No.
So it's just out of touch. I don't understand. Here's my biggest complaint. I love the pod idea. I love the idea of branching out 4 different divisions and putting these teams up against each other that have some meaning to each other, whether it's geography, whether it's rivalries or whatever. Just put a bunch of guys together and try to make it balanced. I get that. Like you don't, but you have to take in consideration that other teams are going to be up and other teams are going to be down. It's not something you're not planning for the next 5 years or 10 years. You're planning for the next forever. And now, how good are these teams really going to be once they get some things lined up? It lacks, like I said over and over again, it lacks the intelligence of what the SEC is and the teams that are playing in it. So I went ahead and briefly, so it's not perfect, but I briefly created my own. And obviously, knowing me, I made it in Notepad because I am I am not the technically savvy. No, I need to figure out what's going on with my login with the Microsoft Office suite. But here's my scenario. Okay, so same thing. You got 4 divisions now of 4 teams. Each team will play 9 SEC games in a season. So this is adding 1 more game to the schedule. 3 of the games will be each team in your division you're going to have to play. 3 games will be 1 annual matchup that you're going to have to play every year. So this is where you want to try to get those rivalries that aren't in your division. Okay. And then 3 games that are one rotational matchup team in each of the other divisions. So that's 3 potential teams in each division, and you just rotate through those 3. So at most, you're looking at 3 years, 4 years that you're going to end up playing that same team again. So if you miss out on a rivalry or you miss out on a matchup, you're going to get them in 3 years. That's significant as opposed to what it currently is, where you may never play them again. Or you'd be like Kentucky, and you're already in the system, and you play Alabama 3 times in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So, and then in the end of it, now this is where mine's a little bit different. I know some people want to do like a 14 playoff. That's never going to fly. SEC is not going to do a full 14 playoff before they play a playoff. It's suicide. I mean, put the 2 teams that have the best record after all this, because with the rotational games, there's going to be a lot of matchups that aren't on your normal, your normal yearly schedule. So I went ahead and broke these out by regional. So I took the North. So these aren't always the most northern teams. I know that, but they're pretty much the most northern teams. You have Oklahoma, Kentucky, Missouri, Vanderbilt. That's pretty, I mean, Oklahoma is obviously the top contender there, but we'll get down into the schedule and you'll see where these annual matchups kind of balance everything out there. In the East, you have Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee. Not much different than what they had, but Tennessee is a rival to all 3 of these other teams. So they're a natural team to put in here. I know what you're thinking, Tennessee fan. Well, hey, if I don't get my ASS pushed in by Alabama each year, what's the point? Well, again, that's where your annual consistent matchup will come into effect. In the South, you have basically Alabama schools and Mississippi schools. Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss. All these teams have a lot of history with each other, particularly Auburn and Alabama. In the West, is where it kind of you have to just use the geographics to make sense of it. These are really good teams at their peak, but they're not always at the same peak as each other, and this is where recruiting comes into a huge effect. LSU, Texas, and Texas A&M are pretty much the same team. It's just whoever has the best recruiting at the time. Texas A&M has been the lowly. So has LSU, though, and so has Texas as of late. These teams have all been down, and they've all been at the pinnacle. I know Texas A&M hasn't won a championship or even a conference championship in that time, but they've been pretty good in some years. They've been very competitive. Teams that are knocking on the door at the SEC championship in a division that has Alabama in it. And then Arkansas is the unfortunate soul that has to be lumped. Now, Arkansas is obviously no slouch either. They have an incredible fan base, very passionate fan base. From what we saw from Sam Pittman, they might be competitive year one. I don't think they're going to be world stars in this division. But again, like I said at the top, this is where those rotational and annual matchups really help out a team like Arkansas who's stuck in this division that most people would sit there and look at that at face value and say, well, that's just suicide. So we'll scroll down in here. This is where I've broken out what this would look like. And I went ahead and I picked one annual matchup from each group for each team. So you're going to see basically what every year a team under my scenario would look like. And let's see. So starting with the North, you have Oklahoma, Kentucky, Missouri, Vanderbilt. You have them all playing each other once throughout the schedule, indicated by the N at the top. And then below that, you get to see where their annual matchup or rival would be, right? Like this would be the cross-divisional rivalry that we currently have in the SEC. So for Oklahoma, it's Texas. Duh. The Red River Shootout, it's not going to be missed. And I know, like, you got to also consider, like, the home and homes and all that stuff and figure out, like, that's not my job here. I'm just sitting here trying to point out how we can make it more balanced and more respectful to the SEC's rivals and history. I've additionally added Florida to theirs. If you imagine, Oklahoma has a pretty weak division, with all due respect, Matt. Kentucky, Missouri, and Vanderbilt. So Texas and Florida and Ole Miss even are very respectable teams to add to that to kind of balance it out, make it more stronger of an annual schedule. So every year you're going to have to play these same 6 teams. So that balances it out really well. Kentucky, you got your normal 4 North teams, and then you have Texas A&M, which is kind of an oddball. It's screwy, but it makes sense when we talk about the balance. Again, you have Oklahoma. So in this one, you have 1, 2, you could argue a third one, but it's really just 2, 3 teams that are kind of every once in a while they'll be up there. So really in Oklahoma, you have 2 teams that are competitive, but over here in Kentucky, you're going to get a good team out of Oklahoma pretty much every year, and you're going to get a good team out of Texas A&M out of the West. Additionally, you're going to get a good team out of Georgia, and Kentucky knows that very well. And then Mississippi State. This is where I'd like to pause a little bit. I know this one's a little bit different. You know what? I'll bring that up in a minute. It's a little bit difficult because you have Oklahoma sitting here, but I would like to point out that these are pretty much the teams that Kentucky plays every year anyway. I mean, they're playing Missouri, you're playing Vanderbilt, you're playing Georgia, you're playing Mississippi State. So the only teams that you added was Texas A&M and Oklahoma. And you can't tell me that running into Bama as frequently as Kentucky has, or running into LSU or Auburn on a good year, or even playing Florida every year, that doesn't balance out anyway, as opposed to what they're currently playing. I mean, that's the thing I wanted to mention at the top, but I didn't, is think of your schedule today and who you currently are guaranteed to play every year. Each team in the SEC is guaranteed to play 6 divisional teams and 1 team out of the other division. So think about who you're already scheduled to play and ask yourself, are you better off or worse with my current model? Because you're pretty much the same. you're not getting your beat through the roof, but then that makes it to where adding like the 8-team scenario on each division, somebody's going to get screwed, the East or the West. I know you could just say, well, whoever Alabama's in, it's really easy to say, but somebody's going to end up getting screwed. Because even if Alabama vacates the West, you're still getting Texas and Oklahoma added to your conference. And I know Texas isn't Texas necessarily, but Oklahoma's not slouch. I know people are wanting to see Oklahoma get absolutely destroyed in an SEC schedule. But I mean, they're a really good football team. They're nothing to shake a stick at. And Texas, if you give them that SEC moniker, do you really think that LSU and Texas A&M are going to be able to recruit as well as they have in the state of Texas versus Texas? No. So let's get back at it, though. I'll stop my fine print, I guess you could say, for this. So in Missouri's case, you've added LSU, South Carolina, and Alabama. So Alabama and LSU are really brutal teams to add to the schedule. I get that. But if you look at the rest of the schedule for a Missouri-type team, that's 3 teams that you're gonna have a hard time against. So again, it's balanced out. You have a good Oklahoma team, you have a good LSU team, you have a good, really, really good Alabama team. Then you have a South Carolina team, who knows, with Kentucky, and then a Vanderbilt team that just go ahead and pencil in the wins. For Vanderbilt, actually, in this entire model, probably has the easiest schedule. And I don't think Vanderbilt fans would complain with that, even though they're probably still going to lose to every single one of these teams. You have Oklahoma, Kentucky, Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Auburn. Who scares you there outside of Oklahoma? I know Auburn will scare you, and I know Kentucky and Missouri occasionally, and Tennessee whenever they get better. They'll scare you, but currently, if you were looking at the next 5 years, would any of these middle teams scare you at all? Kentucky, Missouri, Arkansas, or Tennessee? No,
Nope.
not at all. if you're Vanderbilt.
Nope.
You'll take that over having to play Florida and Georgia every year. You'll take that.
Yeah, exactly.
Going down to the East. Now, I think these two next ones are the most brutal ones that you're going to see. I know the West is a little crazy, and you might see 4 really good teams, but Florida in their scenario, Florida is looking at 3 teams that are difficult, okay? They're going to, of course, get their Georgia in their division, and then they're going to have Texas A&M and Oklahoma. I don't think either one of those teams is just detrimental to Florida's opportunity for success. I don't. I think you lose some rivalry games, but you keep Georgia and Tennessee.
Yep.
In that scenario. Florida, like, let's be honest, Florida fans. I know some Florida fans are on this channel. Outside of Georgia and Tennessee, who could you really consider a rival in the SEC? I know I've talked about Auburn as being the historic rival, and then I know I talked about the cross-divisional against LSU in more recent years. But other than that, that's your rivals. and Tennessee is even a stretch. I mean, your real rivals as a Florida fan is Georgia, Florida State, and Miami, and that's it. There is no other teams.
That's right.
The other ones, it just comes and goes like waves. I know one of my buddies on YouTube, we were having a debate today, and we were talking about the Alabama, because somebody brought up the fact that Georgia and Alabama might even be a rivalry now. And it was like, do you recall when we were, getting through the 90s, did you feel like Alabama was Florida's rival? I didn't at all. Like, not at all. Alabama is this and Florida is this, and they play each other a lot in the championships, but they're not rivals. There's bitterness for the loser, but as the winner, there's no extra satisfaction for beating Alabama as opposed to beating any other team you threw up there. I know Florida beat Auburn and Arkansas in the SEC championships during those runs. It didn't really feel any different. It was just another team that you were playing, a respectable opponent, just like anybody would be excited about beating an Ohio State or a Clemson. It was just another game. So I don't see that as being a rival. Long way around it, Florida really has 2 rivals, so they have the least amount to lose for breaking up these divisions.
Yep.
As you'll see some of these other teams, particularly teams in the Big 12, there's not really many rivalries. I know a lot of people that think they're the traditionalists and stuff like that. The tradition's already broken. I mean, there's so many games that we're not getting anymore. Back in the day, they played basically 6 games at random in the conference. And that was it. Like, you had no control of who it was, how often you played them. It was just 6 games. You square up. Like, I think there was 1 constant, maybe 2 constants. I think there was 2 constants because Florida's was Georgia and Auburn. But other than that, you got LSU once, and who knows if you'd ever play them again. Moving on, though. Georgia, you got Florida, South Carolina, Tennessee, Auburn, LSU, Kentucky. Again, 3 teams that you could point out that are going to be pretty good in some years. I know Auburn's down right now, but in most years, you would consider them one of the top 10. In this scenario, you would consider them one of the top 8 teams in the SEC, without a question. South Carolina, you're looking at Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Texas, and Missouri. Again, you have 3 teams that you really could say are a push for a team. And you can't make everything even. I mean, there are teams that are worse than other teams in this conference. We've known that for a while. So South Carolina, you just can't give them all money. Can't give them all teams that are like comparison to them. There's a reason why Florida is Florida, and there's a reason why Georgia is Georgia, and there's a reason why Alabama is Alabama. They're good. So if you have to play them, they're really good and they're really hard to beat. So you just can't make everybody's schedule perfect. Tennessee's, you got Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, Arkansas, Vanderbilt. This one has the most rivalries that I counted, and they're all there. 5
Yeah.
rivalries in this one little spread. You got Georgia, the only rival for Tennessee, and I don't know how many Tennessee fans outside of the border would sit there and say it's a rivalry, is Kentucky. And you just couldn't fit Kentucky in there because you're already taking Vanderbilt, who is more of a rival out of the North Division.
Yeah.
So that Kentucky team would come around every 3 years, so you get that rivalry. But it's one of those ones that's going to have to get lost in the shuffle. And I don't think too many teams are going to complain about that.
No.
All right, in the South, you have Alabama, Auburn, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss. Alabama is retaining Auburn, Ole Miss rivalries. Mississippi State is a team that they have a lot of history with. They get Missouri out of the North, out of the East, they get their rival Tennessee, and out of the West, they get their rival LSU.
Mm-hmm.
Who's complaining about that? You still get Alabama, LSU, and if you look at Alabama's schedule, it's pretty much the way it is now. It's the same way it is now.
Yep.
It's the exact same way it is now. There's nobody beating Alabama in the rotational games out of the East. You're going to get Florida. You're going to get Georgia occasionally. You're going to get Oklahoma. You're going to get Texas. It's the same thing it is now.
Yep.
Auburn. You got Alabama, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, Georgia, Texas. So you retain your Georgia, Alabama, so important rivalries for that team. And I know how it is down there on the plains. And then you add Texas. That's a very sexy team to add as a constant rival. Texas Auburn would be a hell of a rivalry. That's a game I would love to see.
Would too.
I would tune in every single time those teams played. Now, of course, obviously you're missing LSU. I know, Auburn fan. I'm sad for you there, but that's just one of those things that's going to have to fall to the side. And I think if you asked an Auburn fan which games are the most important, they would definitely say Alabama and Georgia. And then Texas is not a bad consolation for LSU. Mississippi State, they look like they're going to get again, this is a team that is worse than other teams in this conference. Alabama, this is probably the hardest schedule, and I will admit that. It's really hard to try to make everything fit perfectly and not screw a team. Ask Missouri and Arkansas about their 2020 schedule. Alabama, Auburn, Ole Miss, Kentucky, Florida, and Texas A&M. Kentucky and Ole Miss are really the only hope you have to get a win out of that one. Maybe Auburn will be down. Maybe Texas A&M will fall off the horse. Maybe Florida will have a 4-8 season. Who knows? Alabama's not going anywhere. So
no.
Ole Miss, it's kind of the same. You do get a little bit easier schedule than your rival, and I know that would piss off Mississippi State fans to no end. But you have Auburn, Alabama, Mississippi State, Oklahoma, South Carolina, and Arkansas. So, of course, South Carolina and Arkansas, you probably would take over Florida and Texas A&M any day of the week. But it is how the schedules would fit out, and you just cannot make it perfect under this circumstance. You just can't. But the important thing for pretty much every SEC fan, even casual fans, is make sure we're getting those games we want to see. It's not just about the big time matchups and stuff. We need to see Alabama play Tennessee. We need to see Florida and Georgia meet up in Jacksonville. We currently, with this situation, we all want to see the Red River Shootout with the SEC logo in the middle. That would be awesome. And then in the West, to close it out, you have LSU, Texas A&M, and Arkansas. You have Texas, LSU schedule. You have Georgia, Missouri, and Alabama being added. You might think the same as I in this, but hear me out here. Like I was saying over and over again, this is not much different than what LSU already plays. They play Florida every year. They play Alabama every year. They play Auburn every year. So you're still playing Alabama. You're placing Florida with Georgia, and you play Texas A&M every year, and you could throw Arkansas. You could throw Texas and Auburn at a wall, and you wouldn't know which one just came out. So, I mean, what's changed? This is the same schedule. And who knows who you're going to get out of the random ones. And, of course, I'm not going to sit here and try to break it all down with the rotationals and give them the home and the away games and stuff like that. It's just I did this in like 30 minutes, guys. But I at least know something about the SEC and how much the rivalries are to us. And then in Texas's case, you get South Carolina, Oklahoma, and Auburn. It's pretty balanced. That's pretty balanced. You get your Oklahoma rivalry, you get a fun rivalry against Auburn, and then South Carolina is a team that may or may not be a good team in some years, but they're still an SEC team. You got to take them seriously. Texas A&M is going to add Florida, which I bet they would love because they have a lot of success against us. Kentucky and Mississippi State. That's not bad. That's not bad for a team like that. You know you're going to have to play LSU. You know you're going to have to play Texas. And you know you're going to have to play Florida. Outside of that, there's your 3 teams good, 3 teams you can win. I mean, 3 teams, it's balanced as best it can be. LSU, Texas A&M for Arkansas. Look at their next 3 teams. Look at Arkansas's next 3 teams. If I told this to any Arkansas fan, they'd take this in a heartbeat.
Oh, yeah.
They'd run away with it.
Oh, yeah.
Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and Ole Miss. You see Alabama? You see Nick Saban on there?
Nope.
No? Okay. I think they'd take this one. They still get their LSU rivalry that's so important to them. And then they get to rehash some of the rivalries that they love, Texas and Texas A&M. I know Jerry Jones would be loving this.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, Matt. And I know I didn't hit them all, but just quickly looking through this in the eyes of a Florida and Kentucky fan, we did take a few notable rivalries that were going to fall on the wayside for this. And these are current games. There are annual matchups that are going to fall by the wayside. And, of course, like we said, the rotational games will pick them up. They just won't be every single year. So here are the notable games that we could come up with that won't be every year matchups. You got LSU Auburn, LSU Florida, LSU Ole Miss. LSU, like Tennessee, seems to pick a fight with every single team that they play. I mean, Arkansas, Ole Miss, Alabama, Auburn, Florida. And now they're trying to start a rivalry with Texas A&M.
Yep.
It seems like LSU can't get enough of rivalries, so you're gonna have to lose some rivalries, and it looks like you lost 2 of your more insignificant rivals, Auburn and Florida, really good teams. You probably don't like playing every year. I think the one that's going to hurt here is LSU Ole Miss, though. That is a very important game for both teams. We know that famous poem was written about it, about riding into Death Valley for Ole Miss. They love that game, and that one's going to hurt. And we're all going to – it's going to suck that game is not going to be on there. But, again, you're already heading down that path for a lot of other rivalries. So some rivalry is going to have to give. And I know we want to keep them all. And again, the SEC could just say no to Texas and Oklahoma. It's not going to happen. If this is a real deal, there's no way in the world the SEC is going to turn down adding Texas and Oklahoma to its conference. I mean, if you were like, I know, take off the SEC. I got the SEC homer here. I got the whole thing here. Take off your SEC homer shades for 2 seconds and think about this. Texas and Oklahoma. And you don't want to add those to your conference? I mean, Jesus. Think of the money that come in. Think of the matchups. Think of how exciting it's going to be to watch Oklahoma roll into Tuscaloosa. I mean, think about these matchups, man. And then you have Tennessee and Kentucky. That's another rivalry that's going to be brutal to lose, in my opinion. I grew up in the city of Lexington. I know how important that game is to Kentucky And I know it's not always gone Kentucky's way. So maybe Kentucky can bear to lose that rivalry. And I don't think Tennessee fans are going to miss that one, knowing that they get to keep the other rivalries against Florida and Georgia and South Carolina and Vanderbilt and Alabama. So I think that's a pretty clean break on that one too. And then Arkansas, Missouri, I added it in there because it is a fun little rivalry game. But it's a short-lived rivalry. I know they go back to the old Southwest Conference, but as far as an SEC rivalry, it's a short-lived rivalry, a fun one, but it's going to have to go.
Yeah.
And then I tried to get a few matchups that I thought were majorly interesting. And, of course, I tried to leave out Texas and Oklahoma because Texas and Oklahoma are going to get added to the conference. It's exciting. It's going to be fun for them to play Vanderbilt. I mean, maybe not Vanderbilt, but pretty much everybody in the SEC. It's going to be fun to watch Texas and Oklahoma to play. So I didn't include them in this little short little snippet, but it is going to be fun to watch Texas A&M and Florida play every year, and LSU and Georgia play every year. And those are the ones that stood out to me. I know there's other games, and I'm sure some other fans are looking at the schedule and they're licking their chops at watching a game that they just didn't get to see very often because of the current format. You didn't get to see a team play another team that often. So it'd be really fun to see some of these matchups.
Oh, yeah.
With that,
Definitely.
I'm winded. And what are your initial thoughts? I'm going to scroll back on here. What are your initial thoughts of this? You like it? You hate it?
I personally like it. I didn't really go through this and see and put it in a pod system, but when you first showed me this before we made this video, this is not a bad idea because I personally think you did a good job at keeping a lot of the traditional rivalries that SEC is known for. Yeah. And if you were to lose some of those more traditional ones, then the SEC just wouldn't be the SEC every year. So, just viewership wise, I mean, the teams would still be, but viewership wise, okay, you've got the Iron Bowl still going, you've got the Egg Bowl still going, you've got Florida, Georgia going. I mean, there's three. I mean, two of those are the top two rivalries in the conference. So, I mean, you've got them going, and if we were somehow lost those games, would be crazy. I mean, it just wouldn't be college football without those rivalries. As a Kentucky fan, I'm looking at some of these possible matchups, and it's going to be a lot of fun TV to watch, guys. I mean, if you don't love college football, then you don't. I don't know what else to tell you, because when this happens. Don't look for it to happen this year. Whatever you're seeing for 2021, your schedule, that's what you're going to play. This will not happen until 2022 at the earliest, because the SEC, I read a report earlier this afternoon that the SEC apparently is already making schedules for Oklahoma and Texas. So if that doesn't tell you that this is a done deal, it's coming. So
I actually got off the phone before we got on this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm also looking at some of this as to I'm looking at some more fun games to go to. I mean, you best believe I'm going to be at Commonwealth, Kroger Field, when the years Oklahoma's coming to town, or every 3 years we get Texas. You best believe I'm going to be there. Hell, even when we play Texas A&M, them being our every year opponent out of that division, I'm going to be there at Commonwealth. It's just going to be so much fun to see some of these matchups and just newer matchups that we wouldn't get till bowl season. So, and I think you did a good job, Justin, at making these pods. I mean, I know some people will see some flaws in it, but personally, as someone who loves as much SEC football as you do, I don't see a problem with a lot of these. I really don't.
Well, thank you. And again, guys, I'm talking to you all out there. If you see something in here that you would love to see adjusted, this is just for fun. I mean, there's no way in hell this is what it's going to end up looking like. So if you came here to see that, I'm not an SEC insider. I'm just out here just a crazy, nutty SEC fan that loves talking football and lives in a city that nobody talks about college football. So I live in Cincinnati, if you were wondering about that last part. But we have just it would be amazing to have Texas and Oklahoma. It would be fun to put them in there. And I mean, you get two perspectives here, from Florida fan and from Kentucky fan. For a Florida fan, I would love to see him. Does it hurt my feelings that another two good teams are going to join the SEC? Does that bother me? Does that concern me? No, not at all. Like, I'm addicted to good football games. Okay.
Yeah.
Do I get a little hungover during the season when we go through a stretch of playing, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, South Carolina, Missouri? Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I'm tired of that. I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
I'm sure Tennessee would like to see in October that makes sense every once in a while. I'm sure Auburn is terrified of playing two teams back to back. Okay. We're all tired of it. Okay. Mix it up a little bit. I know people are traditionalists, and I'm not trying to disrespect that. I think I try to do the best job as I can to preserve what it means to be in the SEC. I think we all would love to see a mix-up, something to change this thing, because it's again, to have to wait 14 years to see a team play. I mean, think of how much different programs are in 14 years.
Yep.
I mean, 14 years ago, we were talking about Florida winning back-to-back national championships. Like, Are they going to do it? No, they didn't do it, but they won 2 and 3 years. But I mean, that's think about that, guys. Think about that. I mean, we had Missouri was undefeated and was playing Kansas. For the Big 12 championship. 14 years is a long fucking time in college football. All right.
Yeah.
So let's think about something here that gets us playing these SEC games that we love, and we want to see these big matchups. And oh god damn, Florida would kill Auburn next year if we played them. That kind of thing. It actually starts coming to fruition, and you don't see these ridiculous recruiting differences over that period of time, where Florida Auburn may not be the most exciting matchup anymore, or in the case of like Ole Miss 2014. Ole Miss is a completely different team last year than they were then. Completely. Kentucky in 2018. You know what I mean? Like, you have teams pop up and pop out and go. They beat your ass in 2018. Well, you don't get to see them for another 14 years, so who knows what they're going to be then. I'd like to see these rivalries and these matchups be preserved, but we need something different in the SEC. And I think this Texas-Oklahoma thing is the perfect opportunity to do it. Perfect opportunity. And if we keep it traditional, fine. I'm still going to watch. You're going to watch. You're going to watch. Everybody's going to watch.
Yeah.
It's SEC football, people. All right? And then we're talking about a 12-team playoff too. Look at the teams in this conference. Does anybody with a rational mind really going to sit here and tell me that 4 of these teams at least aren't making it into a 12-team playoff? I mean, seriously, Vanderbilt's not.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. I'll guarantee that one. All right. But the rest of these teams, Vanderbilt just needs to go ahead and just tell the SEC, give us their check. We'll go ahead and forfeit every one of these games, and y'all can. I thought Derek Mason was built for this job. That kind of. But I don't know. But again, yeah, if you guys see something that you guys would like to see, or just something you would like to tweak out of this, go ahead and drop it in the comment section. I really appreciate that. Again, we're gonna start getting back on these videos pretty frequent. We're not going to be, we're not professional YouTubers. Me and Matt got full-time jobs. No disrespect to the hustle. I respect every one of you guys that are on YouTube. Work your asses off. But we don't have that situation where we can commit to this. We can talk to each other on the phone for 4 or 5 hours every Saturday. I promise you, if we're not sitting next to each other. And we're going to try to bring more content to you. Of course, Casey, Alex, Chad, I think will be back. Everybody will be back to make our predictions. Me and Matt.
Mm-hmm.
I think Casey's probably going to join us for this. I haven't really talked to him yet. But we're going to start doing some predictions on each of these teams' schedules for the 2021 schedule. So no Oklahoma and Texas here. No crazy mix-up. No pods. No tie pods for everybody. We're gonna get through this, SEC fans. Okay.
Yeah.
It's gonna be really fucking exciting when we do get
it.
All right. So just calm down, enjoy it, and think about the problems that the Big 12 has right now.
Exactly. Especially if some of those other teams end up, like we mentioned at the top of the show, that it just if some of those other teams leave, like if TCU, Baylor, and Texas Tech go to the Pac-12, and Kansas, I heard Kansas is going to reach out to the Big Ten and maybe join them. I mean, what's the Big 12 left with? Like, are they a conference, or are they going to get? I've also seen something where the Big 12 stays, and they're going to bring up some of these American and Conference USA teams.
Yeah.
So you just never know. It's definitely an interesting time in college football. And one other thing I wanted to say was, this add of Oklahoma and Texas is definitely something that Justin brought up, the 12-team playoff. This is definitely the SEC making itself be even more of a power conference than it already is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got 12 spots open. Now, granted, that if that's approved, that won't happen till I think they said 2025 or 2026.
Yeah, when the contract is up.
Yeah, when the contract's up. So that gives Texas and Oklahoma a couple years, to get acquainted and for us all to get used to the new SEC schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the SEC flexing its muscles like it does every single year, and having more spots taken from their teams because you like we said, it's all about the money. So
yeah. And out of these 16 teams, 10 of them is going to beat Notre Dame.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are we worried about? I know you got Clemson and Ohio State, but they're going to be there anyway. You're going to have to play Clemson for you, for the people in here, Kentucky's, Tennessee's, South Carolina's. You're going to have to beat Clemson or Ohio State to get to the championship game, okay? So adding more teams to your conference isn't going to be as big of a deal than, having to win the damn national championship game, all right? So, calm your horses down. And same with us Florida fans. And I don't know who the hell else is bitching about this, I'm scratching my head about the people complaining about this. LSU, maybe. The only two, in my opinion, the only two teams that really have an opinion, and I've said it earlier in this video, the only two teams that can complain about this is Texas A&M for obvious reasons, and LSU. LSU is not going to be as dominant in Texas as they've always been. I mean, Alabama's going to lose some recruits. Oh, well. Georgia's going to lose a few recruits. Oh, well. I mean, they're recruiting Florida a hell of a lot better than they're recruiting Texas. Okay. Yeah. I think Florida is now 6th in the state of Florida in recruiting. Okay. Those teams are going to get who they want, regardless of who's in the conference or not. Okay.
Yeah.
So calm down. And the NIL, I'm not even going to talk about that right now. But what do you think that's going to do recruiting? All right.
Yeah.
So let's calm down. Hold your horses, Texas A&M, who makes the most money out of, I think, pretty much every team in the country in revenue.
Yeah.
Now you can just straight up pay players.
Exactly.
You think Texas is going to keep up with you in recruiting there? No, probably not. So calm down. Everybody just calm down. Calm down. Add those two teams. Let's have fun. Let's watch football. It's what we do best.
Exactly.
All right, that's going to be it for our video tonight, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Matt, for coming on with me, as always.
Absolutely.
And yeah, tell me how bad I am at making schedules. 30 minutes after leaving the pool. There you go. Let's do this.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, guys. Yeah, be sure to check us out. Hit subscribe if you like what you saw today. It's going to be more in the realm of this. Of course, we're going to do a lot of predictions, and a lot of us just talking just straight football strategies, games, what we saw over the weekend, that kind of thing throughout the football season. But as a lead-in, we're probably just going to talk about big news. This is pretty damn big news, and just getting those schedule previews, getting those out. So thanks again, and we'll see you. I guess we'll see you later this week, right?
Yeah. See you very soon, guys.
Yeah. See you guys. Thank you.